The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of the ANA or its members.
Everything in this industry is moving away from a deterministic track the user across each environment.
Yes.
And by the way, it's getting more and more complex.
On today's episode of On Scope, Slingwave CEO Paul Boruta breaks down incrementality in marketing and the difference between interesting data and useful data. And this week on Marketing News you might have missed, two streaming giants join forces as Spotify podcasts become Netflix programming. All that next on Scope. Friends, we are back at it. This is On Scope, the marketing podcast brought to you by the ANA and powered by Odyssey, a leading audio streaming platform. You can get your favorite podcasts, music, and entertainment all on the Odyssey app. I am your host, Mike Berberich, and with me, as always, Ryan Dinger, the intrepid producer and creator of On Scope. Ryan, how does the day find you?
I am doing quite well, Mike. We're in here a little earlier in the morning than we typically are. But
yes, indeed.
Hey, if you're doing this at the start of your day, it's going to be a pretty good day, I think.
Yes, indeed. We're up and at it.
You could start.
Absolutely. I've got the coffee to keep me going.
Amen to that.
So, Ryan, as is usual around these parts at ANA Studios, we have got a phenomenal conversation all queued up today. You know, we're just changing the way that marketers think and approach marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like very proud and very, very grateful for our ability to keep doing this.
No, as you should.
And one vital part of that you, dear listeners, have let us know that you quite enjoy, so we would never keep it from you, is a little segment we like to call Marketing News You Might Have Missed.
That is right, Mike. It is Marketing News You Might Have Missed. This week's headline brought to you by ANA Magazine. Netflix teams up with Spotify for video podcasting deal. Netflix is jumping into the market of video podcasting. Spotify and Netflix on Tuesday announced, this was Tuesday of last week, by the way, announced that they are joining forces to bring sports, culture, lifestyle, and true crime video podcasts from Spotify Studios and The Ringer to Netflix. Audiences in the U.S. will be able to watch a variety of video podcasts starting in early 2026, with additional markets to follow. Lauren Smith, VP of Content Licensing and Programming Strategy at Netflix, said in a statement, quote, "As video podcasts continue to grow in popularity, our partnership with Spotify allows us to bring full video versions of these top shows to both Netflix and Spotify audiences." Roman Wazenmuller, and I hope I'm getting that right, Roman, if I'm not, my apologies, who is the VP and head of podcasts at Spotify, said in a statement that the deal marks a new chapter for podcasting. Quote, "Together with Netflix, we're expanding discovery, helping creators reach new audiences, and giving fans around the world the chance to experience the stories they love and uncover favorites they never expected. This offers more choice to creators and unlocks a completely new distribution opportunity." Spotify says it plans to develop similar marketing opportunities for a wider range of creators. So, Mike, Spotify is the largest music streaming platform in the world.
Indeed it
is. It is teaming up with Netflix, the largest TV streaming platform in the world. Two mega media giants are teaming up. I would love to hear your thoughts.
Well, you know, it's like if you stepped outside one day and Godzilla and King Kong walking down the street holding hands. I don't think anything's going to stand in their way. So the first thing that jumps out to me is that everything old is new again. The thing that I immediately think of when I hear this story is when brands, D2C brands, digital native brands, organizations like Warby Parker, who really struck out and differentiated themselves in that they did not have a physical location and that they worked directly with you. When they started building brick and mortars, it just gave this feel of like there's just this cyclical nature in absolutely everything, and certainly business and marketing is no different.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember My goodness, I remember us watching, my wife and I, quote unquote, watching the Serial podcast, which was a purely audio format at the time because podcasting was new to both of us. So we were like literally streaming it on our TV and sitting there as if there were any video.
Yeah.
Then I watched the space really evolve and come into itself where, you know, in the pure audio things, formats would be all over the place. You'd get 1 2.5 hour episode, 1 hour and 10-minute episode. It was really focusing in on the content. And now here we are, more and more, there is a video audio hybrid, you know, pointing to ourselves. I'm not,
Oh, yes.
you know, we're right here along riding this wave. And I've seen the segments and each episodes become a little bit more uniform. And here we have the final form of audio podcasts. Video audio podcasts now streaming on a TV streamer. And it just, one thing that says to me as a marketer is that maybe we are looking at formats and platforms a little too closely. You know?
What do you mean by that?
Well, I don't think that podcasts became more interesting because they added a video element. I think they added a video element so that they can be discoverable in more places.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so I think that, you know, it isn't about people want 30 minutes of video. Nobody goes onto any platform anywhere being like, you know what I need? 10 minutes of anything. Or you know what I need? A video of anything. You know, these podcasts have grown to the point where they're now becoming Netflix programming because they have engaging hosts who are genuinely passionate about what they're talking about. And through a lot of, you know, testing and learning have come to the formats and the segments and the energy and the everything that they know their customers, their tribe is going to love.
Yeah, it is sort of the logical conclusion of just social media in general in the 21st century, in the digital age. I remember back in the, you know, years ago now when I was in the director of social media role here at the ANA, having conversations with people about, like, people are logging on to Facebook or they're logging on to Instagram. They don't know what they're going to want to look at. They just want to scroll their news feed, and it's up to you to sort of catch their attention and give them things that make sense for whatever environment they're in. And this, at the time, the discussion was about like the need to caption our videos because they may be watching stuff in a soundless environment, but they still want to watch something. You have to give them that opportunity. And this is similar. You know, podcasts were once an audio only format. I've actually had debates with people in recent years about, like, is it really a podcast anymore if you're doing all video? Because I've been a big proponent of this, as you know, pushing to get to this point where we're just doing a full video show.
Absolutely.
And people saying, like, well, that's like a TV show. It's not really a podcast anymore. And pointing out, like, within the last 2 years, YouTube has quite literally become the #1 podcasting platform on the internet.
Yeah.
So it is still a podcast. It's just an evolution and one that, like I said, it's the logical conclusion. Interesting on that is Netflix noted that this deal prevents the show from airing, or prevents the shows that, you know, the podcast that will be airing on Netflix from airing in their entirety on YouTube, which is Netflix's biggest competitor, according to the New York Times. Couple more stats here for you, Mike. Video podcasting continues to proliferate rapidly, spurred by smart TV adoption. 30% of podcast listeners between the ages of 15 and 29 mostly watch video with some audio, eMarketer says. Another 22% listen to and watch video equally. Older consumers tend to listen to audio only. And a lot of times this is passive watching. You know, I know I'll put on something on YouTube while I'm cooking. I'm not really looking at the TV. I'm listening to it, but the video is still running. That's just the place I like to go, or, you know, that's how I like to engage with the podcast. So there's another question here. You know, I would argue not every brand needs to have a podcast, right? And I feel funny saying that as a producer of this podcast, which is branded. But you know, if you're in a manufacturing company or something, you know, you do HVAC, I don't really know that you need to have a podcast. But with this expansion, with this opportunity to get more eyeballs, eardrums in focused on new creators, new shows, new podcasts, it does sort of make it so that brands need to be thinking about this space more, and maybe not creating their own content, but at least thinking about how they can engage with some of these people who are making these types of shows. You had said before we started recording here, a very interesting thing that you believe now about podcasters and content creators. Do you remember what that was?
Was this about their role in the hierarchy of quote-unquote micro-influencers? Yes. Okay, so this is just my personal belief, but I believe in the universe of micro-influencers that podcasters have a depth of engagement and connection that, I'm sorry, but other types of creators, influencers, and social media personalities do not have. Rich Antonello of Uprocks,
yes.
A view on YouTube and a view on TikTok are not the same thing. They both have value, but they are not the same thing.
Right.
Very much so. If you're a gardener on Instagram or TikTok and you have 5,000 followers, of course they look to you. Of course you're providing value. Of course there's a connection there. If you have a podcast with 5,000 weekly listeners, they're spending 30, 60, 90, 120 minutes with that person or persons every single week.
Yeah.
You develop like a weird parasocial friendship thing because that was the initial draw of podcasting. It felt like you were hanging out with your friends and listening to the interesting thoughts they had on the topics you cared about.
Right.
So on the thing of like not every brand should have a podcast. Not every brand should have a podcast. But you make a very good point, and it reminds me of our conversation with Ro Patrick of the Ad Council that you don't always need to be leading the parade. You know what I mean? You can be part of that, that experience without necessarily having to be the center of attention. So maybe there are passion areas and communities where you can reach out, especially a big brand reaching out to a smaller podcast. Trust me, they will listen and be very excited that you gave half a crap about, can we make something work here?
Yeah.
And now you're cued into a rabidly loyal fan base. So, but I think that I think a podcast should never be on anybody's checklist. Sure. Let me just say that. Like that, a social page, you should probably be at least present on social, because I think that's another thing. YouTube, putting your podcast on YouTube just makes you available and present in more spaces that people already are.
100%.
That's good marketing in the modern age.
Oh, yep.
Sorry. But if there is organic momentum, if there are somebody in your comms department is just an absolute charisma machine and they care about HVAC more than anybody you've ever met, and they're always bringing these new articles, like if there's something there, go ahead and explore it, or bring that person to every conversation they can be in. But let me just tell you, and I think Ryan will back me up on this.
We'll see.
Starting a podcast is not a shoulder shrug decision. Do you agree with me, Ryan?
I do agree with you. There have been many conversations we've had through the years in our role here with multimedia where people are like, yeah, let's just do a podcast. It's like, okay, what's the podcast? It's just a podcast. It's like, well, that's not it's a little harder than that.
Yeah.
And there needs to be consistent content. There needs to be, it's an undertaking for sure. It could be a full-time job.
Absolutely.
As it turns out. Yeah. But interesting little partnership here. Two media giants, as I said, Spotify and Netflix joining forces. Mike, this is some interesting data, but is it useful? Tough to tell.
Yeah,
tough to tell. That's the question that we're helping our listeners out with today, isn't it?
Absolutely. I would rank this as a very high-profile experiment between two hugely popular brands. But, for a lot of us, we may be used to running experiments, and you get a bunch of data, but it's not always helping you make the decisions you need to make to build and grow your brand. We here at On Scope, the marketing podcast, like to consider ourselves problem solvers. And our hero's role is to go out and get the people who can bring the information to you, dear listeners. Today is no exception. Our guest is Paul Boruta, a two-time startup founder and advertising industry veteran with a deep passion for AI and marketing technology. In 2017, he founded Slingwave to tackle some of the most complex challenges in marketing analytics, attribution, and media optimization to empower businesses in making informed marketing investment decisions. Today, he joins our fair pod to break down incrementality in marketing and how to set up experiments that, actually work. My conversation with Paul is up next. Listeners, I tend not to go into autobiographical territory here, but I do feel like it's relevant in mentioning that when I got into advertising back in, I want to say 2010, maybe 2009.
Yes.
One of the very first things I did was a white paper on attribution and how we were getting close to it. And once we cracked this thing, oh man, are you going to love what we got? Listeners, it is 2025, and I don't think we cracked that code at all. So, what we do here at OnScope is we go get the people who are making it happen, who know what is going on, and my guest today is no exception. I am so happy to welcome to the pod Paul Boruta, the CEO of Slingwave. We're getting down and dirty on attribution, incrementalism. We're going wild today, aren't we, Paul?
Yes, we are. Thanks, Mike. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely a pleasure. Thank you so much for being a guest. So, as I say, attribution is not a new conversation. It's something that has taken up a lot of oxygen, but hasn't really moved the needle all that much. So while we have you, my friend, through your perspective at Slingwave and through all of your career and your expertise, why is the attribution, specifically multi-touch attribution, why does that approach fall short?
And I love your story. 2010, that was the golden era, right? You could see across all of these environments. And, I think to answer your question, the years have changed how these walls work, right? So
yes.
You now have walled gardens closing off data. The big platforms have just gotten bigger. Your Googles, your Metas, and oh, by the way, Amazon, the growth of Amazon, the growth of other platforms, connected TV, social. It's just harder and harder to measure across increasingly walled garden environments.
Yeah.
Plus, you have all of the changes in tracking, iOS, not being able to track, having ad blockers. Everything in this industry is moving away from a deterministic track the user across each environment.
Yes.
And by the way, it's getting more and more complex. Just think about the LLMs and how this is disrupting where you go with media and where you track. So you need to, this multi-touch world, it's a great sampling mechanism, but it's like an iceberg that's melting, right? You can reference it, and it is an important element. There's clean rooms, there's data that you can see intra one channel, like intra Amazon, intra Google. But think about trying to track across that, and anytime you have a mix that's more complex than one channel, it's very difficult.
Yeah, we're seeing the trend line go in the direction we don't want it to as far as the efficacy of this approach. So this is kind of why, we never, at OnScope, we're never like, well, that sucks. And then next week, we're going to talk to somebody. No. We're going to help forge a way forward, aren't we, Paul?
That's right. This path.
Heck
there
yeah.
is a way.
Yes. And I think a big part of that is incrementality. Now, I want to do, and maybe this is just for a focus audience of one here myself, but I wanted to do a bit of level setting before we dive in. Could you give us the definition of incrementality specifically when it comes to marketing and how organizations can use this in this quest to know and understand more of what they're doing and how it's working?
Great. I love that question. It's when I think about incrementality, and we talk to marketers all the time, helping them orient around incrementality, the definition is that marketing effort that results in real business outcomes, measurable, quantifiable. And what it is not is marketing efforts that take credit for something that would have happened anyway.
Ooh.
You're walking in the door to your favorite restaurant and somebody hands you a coupon as you walk in that door. You're about to buy something anyway, right? Did that get you there? Or did that just maybe, lose margin for the company,
Yeah.
right? Now, what got you there? It was 3 blocks earlier, a year earlier, you saw an ad for this place, right? This restaurant, and you wanted to go there. So that is the incremental impact of marketing. It's that upstream touch point that started the journey for you. And yes, that last touch point, that might have helped influence you and get you over the edge. Maybe you were about to change your mind. It helped, but it didn't get all of the credit. So I think then when an organization switches their orientation to what is the portfolio of efforts I can take that truly moves my bottom line, that is an incrementality approach.
Love that. I love that. And yeah, because I think that there's always been that kind of almost unspoken thing in the attribution conversation of like, the world happens outside of your impressions, and those things are important, if a bit ephemeral. So yeah, really diving down, and we are going to get into how one does this. But let me ask you, what are the barriers that you see, the most common barriers of a marketer kind of taking this approach, or anybody in the ecosystem taking this approach? Because it seems pretty solid, but obviously this is not how everybody is doing it. This is not how brands are insisting their partners operate. So where are you seeing this friction?
I love that question. I think what happens with incrementality is that it becomes too academic and very difficult to get to, right? So I need to understand what's working right now. What are the steps I need to take to get there? Well, most brands, historically, you have anchored in a last touch model, right?
Yes.
Last touch, last click. Many organizations have this general orientation that kind of comes from finance all the way down to the marketing team and the CMO, saying, hey, I can see the impacts of these last touch channels. I don't know what you're talking about all of the other channels that are driving incrementality. So how do you help an organization get there? So it's not as complicated as you would think, right? There's essentially 3 steps. Now, it is sophisticated, and it requires data science, and it requires alignment. But it's essentially 3 pillars. We think of it as MMM, media mix modeling. So that's long time series modeling of your data and looking at the impact of independent variables like spend in channels on the dependent variable, which is revenue, and or subscribers, or whatever your main KPI is. So that's pillar 1. Pillar 2 is experimentation. So a rigorous test and experimentation plan. You want to lay out over the course of all of the months of the year a plan to understand each channel and figure out if you can test it and validate whether or not it's incremental and your portfolio as a whole. And then finally, you have data that's coming in real time. There is so much data. Now, it might be under walled gardens, behind walled gardens, under the rug. You need to just structure that data and get it in a format the organization can use. So as you orient your organization, you orient partners, vendors, agencies, think about how do you establish those 3 pillars of testing. And they don't always agree. You have one say it's working. The other says it was a 0. There was no impact of CTV or whatever the channel. Now you have a debate, right? Now you have data points. Now you can actually go to the 3rd pillar and test again, right? And so it's an evolution to get to that point.
Yeah, I love that. And it's been brought up on multiple episodes here at On Scope that marketing, and particularly marketing innovation, is the scientific method applied to marketing. Yeah. And the thing is, the scientific method can be frustrating as hell. Scientists are like, oh my God, the experiment didn't work. That's amazing. Because they know that is a data point. But for marketers, like, what are you talking about? It didn't work. That's amazing.
What a disappointment, right? Yeah. Right.
But so I love that. So I love that that's where we're headed. And we will dive into exactly how one sets up a meaningful experiment. But before we get there, and listeners, you're going to have to hang out too. I want to talk about, because what you just laid out, the concept is simple. The process is not easy. Simple doesn't mean easy. However, there is a cost to inaction. And when we come back, we're going to talk about that very thing. Stick around. You're not going to want to miss it. Ryan?
Yeah, Mike?
I've read our ad read ahead of time this week.
Nice. You're doing your prep work. I like that.
You know, every day a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like we actually need to do a little extra prep work. We need some supplies if we're going to do this right.
Okay.
Okay? So I'm thinking like tent.
Okay.
Thinking sleeping bags.
Uh-huh.
Thinking one of those like cool fire starters that like gives a little.
What do you think the ad is?
We're not going camping?
No, Mike.
What?
It's a different.
It was talking all about camp.
It's a different kind
I remember
of camp.
camp.
It's a different kind of camp.
What kind of camp are you talking about?
Mike, CAMP is an acronym. It's short for Certified A&A Marketing Professional Program.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, you turkey.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's actually, if anything could be better than camping in the great outdoors, it's becoming a better, more informed, certified marketer through the A&A.
You know, it's what separates the good marketers from the great ones, Mike. The Certified A&A Marketing Professional Program, aka CAMP, gives you the edge, the strategy, the analytics, and the know-how to turn data into growth. You can get certified and be a better marketer.
That is wonderful. And if you are an A&A member, that is all included in your beautiful, beautiful membership.
It sure is.
And truly, it couldn't be easier for you to go over and start your journey to certification today.
Mm-hmm.
Just head on over to ana.net/camp. That's ana.net/CAMP. And now, back to our show.
A little podcast team retreat out in the wilderness. That sounds kind of fun.
Are you saying I shouldn't cancel the RV reservation then? We are back, listeners. You are listening to On Scope, the marketing podcast. My guest today, Paul Boruta, CEO of Slingwave. And we are talking about how marketers can really get to the point of understanding what they are doing and how it is actually affecting the business bottom line. So you laid out a great kind of view as to somebody who really wants to take incrementality seriously, what they need to do. There's rigor, there's discipline, there's data. This isn't just a memo you send out, hey, we're doing things this way. There's an investment in this, both time, philosophical shift, and
Right.
Obviously this isn't free.
Right.
However, you recently wrote a blog about the hidden cost of inaction, and I love this conversation because so often when we're talking about what to do or not to do in marketing, everybody feels that they've got the risk aversion part down of like daydreaming and catastrophizing. Well, what if we do this and it doesn't work? Can we talk in practical terms? What is the hidden cost of inaction when it comes to fixing measurement, and like how does that actually cost a marketing org over time?
I love that question, and it became obvious. We wrote that blog because it was one of the topics that comes up almost all of the time when you're trying to get adoption within your organization.
Yeah.
So I need to retool this marketing organization. I need to retool the way we measure. But you understand this is a huge lever. It's the most underutilized lever.
Yes.
Because you're spending 100% on media and 0% on analytics. That's really imbalanced. If you take 1% of your media spend or 2%, that range, you put it toward very much enabling your org, hiring people, hiring an outside party, empowering your agency partner to use attribution at this level, you can make that media work significantly better. And we're talking some massive, billion-dollar budgets that we work on, right? So think about a 1% improvement on a billion-dollar budget. Even think of about, a very small budget, a 1%, 2% improvement. I think we see like 5 to 20% on average, and then it can get up to 50% if you're highly unoptimized, right? So it pays for itself. It's one of those things that is self-funding out of media when done right. And it also throws out strategic insights that will enable your organization to do things like build the business next year, build better creative assets by channel, thinking about what channels matter.
Yeah. And I mean, this is, marketers, we talked about creativity, communications. One of the marketers' superpowers is curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think far too often, especially when things are going well, you're like, well, it's working. We're up 5%. I don't need to know exactly what part of this is driving that. Goodness gracious, are you serving yourself short in that aspect?
Right. Right. What if the world changes tomorrow and you didn't understand which piece of that mix works? Suddenly it's not working. You have no answers to your question. I mean, you saw overnight Meta became ineffective for brands on iOS 14. What was your portfolio strategy back then to hedge your bets? And then understand, how do you get back in the game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think goodness gracious, this is seems to be like a kind of central hub to a lot of the conversations we've been having. See, I told you, you can never say the topic. We're going halfway across the universe today, baby.
Attribution, baby.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And one of the conversations that keeps coming up is knowing versus understanding. And I think marketers focus a little too much time on knowing in the thing, where to the point you brought up when iOS 14 came up, if you understood the essence of what in your marketing was working, that wasn't as much of a crisis as if you knew you were putting this much money in that platform and now all of a sudden it's not doing the thing it did yesterday.
Right.
You kind of don't know where that next step is. And I think incrementality is a great approach to getting there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's also a dynamic market where everybody is learning, right? So if you're learning more efficiently, if you're learning about incrementality faster than everyone else chasing the next big platform, you have the move, you have the strategic move, and you need to make the move because your competitors will catch up. Mm-hmm. It's sort of who can adopt that model first and who can leverage it. And I think about it right now with LLMs changing the way discovery happens, and we're about to get ad enablement on all platforms, ChatGPT, and you look for, Anthropic and everybody launching. Soon, we will be able to measure mix across many different new channels. So you need to have a approach for that dynamic world.
Yes. Good luck is preparation meeting opportunity, and you'll want to be a lucky marketer, especially in the current market going crazy, changing almost every single day.
Yeah.
So this is a conversation that came up the first time we spoke, and I really love this because I think it's something that a lot of marketers fall into. How do you differentiate data that's interesting and data that is meaningful to business outcomes? Because I think that happens so often is you get this and you see this trend and it's something, bump goes up there in the grid, but how do you kind of intuitively differentiate what matters from what's an interesting talking point?
This story comes up when I hear that question, which is I was in the trenches at my first startup, Pipewave, and we sold to Zephyr. So I'm working in Zephyr, working with major global brands, which is Netflix and Unilever and others. And one of my colleagues at Netflix, friends, was giving me this feedback saying, we were presenting data that was, you could understand people who loved 80s comedies were huge fans of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Right? That was an insight that was interesting, but was it powerful? How does it get powerful? He told me this. It was interesting, but it's not powerful because I can't move my business with just that insight, right?
Yeah.
I either need thousands of those insights and automation around those insights, which is possible, or I need to bake that up to a higher level. Is it comedies? Is it the fact that it was video, right? What's an actual lever that I have as an organization to make it not just interesting, but powerful?
Yes.
Right. So you get in these conversations, people get excited about maybe there was a creative working, it was particularly effective, or we had some influencer was a great experience. Well, how do you take that and say, great, I need to move this thing 5, 10, 50% next year? So it's things like video works. We're under indexed on top of funnel, we are over reliant on, certain channels, certain tactics. Like, this is powerful.
Yeah, no, I love that. And it's, and it goes in both directions because you need to get to the essence of what's working, because you could throw the baby out with the bathwater just as easily. Like, oh, well, video doesn't work. I was like, well, how did you approach the video? What was the strategy behind, you know what I mean? And if you get to the thing of like, well, we showed another, martial arts kind of action movie to these same people and it just fell flat.
Yeah.
Well, there was a lot more going on in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon than karate.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like understanding the essence, getting to a point where it's like, okay, now we've got something that we can actually run some experiments on.
I love the word experiments.
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
Well, that's I kind of segued myself into my next point. Which we touched on it before, but this is really where the rubber meets the road. Here on Scope, we never like to leave our listeners wondering, so what? What do I do about this? How do I activate on the things that I've just heard? If I'm like jazzed up, if I'm nodding my head, what do I do about it? And I would love it if you could take our listeners through, how do marketers set up experiments that actually tell them something? This is getting to that powerful data. How do you set up an experiment that is going to likely yield data of that kind?
In this day and age, one of the go-to methods is, as you said, a match market test, a geo experiment. And this is something that's been around forever. It's a old tried and true tactic in print, TV, radio, media. But what's old is new. This has come a long way as a tactic. We have now we have the ability to do causal impact at a higher level, that we are able to set up geo experiments with matched markets. And I'll just take a step back and say,
please,
what's a match market?
Yeah,
first, you find a set of states, DMAs, zip codes, countries, if you're global, and you look at whether or not they are similar. So are they similar from the trend in revenue? Are they similar from how you've spent media in the past?
Yes.
Finding those trends, and there's a lot of other elements that go into similarities like political leaning, socioeconomic, weather, etc. You find those pairs, and then you do something to shock the system in one of those pairs. And it's shock. It truly is. Do something different that you will see the impacts. And my favorite is, okay, you don't think marketing's working? Pick a senior executive. Well, we'll just shut it off in those 5 markets. Let's see what happens, right?
Yeah.
And if you're right, then nothing will happen. Marketing wasn't having an impact. But if you're wrong, you will see a massive drop in sales or your subscribers. And we can quantify that because we have a holdout group. It's a set of states or DMAs that we haven't done anything differently.
Yeah.
So you can shock in different ways. You can heavy up in a few states. You can decline everything, like I said, specific channels, connected TV, try new channels that way. It's a very powerful tool.
Yeah, and I think it's something, like you said, this has been around for a very long time, but I think that level of like boldness and bravery is sadly a little bit rare in the industry. And I'm not even saying from marketers, I'm saying from the entire organization to have that, okay, we are going to, I don't even say self-inflicted wound, but we're going to see, shocking the system is the perfect way of putting it. That puts the rubber to the road. When you were talking about incrementality and how last touch attribution specifically can really, financial types like to do it. It's very solid. There's nothing philosophical about, well, that's the click and they did it and they're a customer now, so that's good enough for me. I think in B2B organizations, that's where sales and marketing, I think, might have some of the friction that you hear so often is that, well, no, I can see the salesperson who closed them on this. And so sales got us that customer. And you are just discounting how that customer came to you as a qualified, educated, lead with a demand. And I think something like this, I think it could work in B2C or B2B, but I think especially if marketing is really struggling to gain a seat at the table in an organization where sales is getting nigh 100% of the attribution, shocking the system might clear some heads out.
And if you don't have that headway, yeah, you'll see it. If you need the upper funnel to be working with the lower funnel, it's two cogs of the same machine. You're basically one's feeding the other, and so a lot of the time it's upper funnel that gets the test, right? Let's turn off upper funnel. What is challenging is those effects can be lagged. They take a while, right?
Yeah.
Your affinity to some brand like you saw in, your childhood, that's still there. That's a huge ad stock in your mind, right?
If Coca-Cola disappears tomorrow, it's not going to be like by the weekend we're not going to have any recollection. They've built some very goodwill. Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, those brand studies are very interesting to take on, but I think brands that adopt that and take a very long time series, look at what happens in markets where they haven't made the investment or where they have, that is very powerful.
Absolutely. So, Paul, before I send you out into this beautiful day, one thing occurred to me while we were talking is, how do you, as a marketer who's maybe not the CMO, how do you, as a marketer, introduce this conversation when your organization's doing well? I kind of touched on it before of like, we're up 5% this year. Calm down. Don't worry about it. How do you introduce the concept of incrementalization and the consideration of going into this more experiment-driven measurement kind of future when there's not anything on fire?
Right. Is there ever nothing on fire?
Well,
I know what you mean, though. I totally know what you mean. When the times are good, it's easier to just say we're genius.
Yep.
And then when the times are bad, it's like sharpen the pencil, look under every nook and cranny, and you're trying to find that revenue. So I think it's a great point because yes, organizations need a real champion to say this is important. And a few points is one, the world is changing so fast, right? You have the change in walled gardens, platforms, media, LLMs taking the search journey and all of the discovery in a different direction than we're used to. It's not just Google anymore. We have to be ready to adapt. And next year, most companies have growth goals. How are you going to grow? If you're already up here on your growth and your spend curve, diminishing returns are a real thing.
Yeah.
You can't spend infinitely. So we need to test at the margins. What is the way that I can actually get the next 5%, 10% growth for my organization? And I think it's those times when you have some budget to put it toward this type of investment is the right time.
I love it. And that honestly just shows a sense of ownership and leadership within the organization of like, no resting on laurels. Growth is the goal and it's going to be the goal next year. So what is our growth plan into the future?
Right.
I love it. I mean, I'm sold. You got me,
all right,
Paul.
Sounds good.
No, but for real, this has been such a cool conversation, and measurement doesn't get anywhere near the love that it deserves. And so I'm hoping that we're doing our little part here today to really get the power behind it. You said it before, it is the most underutilized lever that marketers have. We got to get better, my people. Come on now.
There are many people out there who want to help, so I think there's a whole industry around this, as and there's smart data scientists who want to work on this. Bring them into your organization, partner with them. And it doesn't have to be just data scientists. It's really the whole organization loving the attribution discussion like I am.
Yeah.
With you.
Wow. Paul, I think that's a great way to wrap this up with some powerful advice from marketers who understand that measurement is the most underutilized tool in a marketer's kit. We got to get incrementality on the brain. We've got to connect these things to business outcome, more science in marketing, my man.
I'm with you. Yeah. And it's just getting better. I mean, you see this world, it's got tons of, great companies, professionals who want to work on this. AI is accelerating everything we're doing. So it is a time to adopt it. And I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise, my friend, it has been a pleasure having you as a guest on Scope.
Thank you for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it.
Another episode of On Scope, the Marketing Podcast is in the books. I want to extend my sincere thanks to Slingwave CEO Paul Boruta for breaking down a very interesting corner of the marketing world. I swear every single episode makes me a smarter marketer. I hope that's the same for you listeners, so let's all say one big thanks to Paul for stopping by. As a reminder, if you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to see on a future episode of On Scope, go ahead and shoot us a note. We'd love to hear from you. That email, onscope@ana.net. And now, as always, here is your moment of marketing meditation. Take a deep breath, relax those shoulders, and consider the following from author Jules Verne. Science, my boy, is made up of mistakes, but they are mistakes which it is useful to make because they lead, little by little, to the truth. Think on that, and we'll see you next week.
This has been a presentation of ANA Studios.